I have found one analog horror series that I finished watching that we need to talk about. One that not only scared the hell out of me, but made me question everything about man and what lies inside the blackest reaches of one's mind. In the vast, dense forests of Massachusetts, there lies a mountain. To some, this is just another mountain to conquer, another vista to gaze upon. But the truth is, there's something deep within the heart of this mountain, something that men only whispered of. A shadow darker than the night itself. And now it's awake. But the scariest part, one that I've come to discover while watching this series, was that it was already awake. It has always existed. It was just waiting. And for the span of decades, this shroud, born from the darkest voids of our own minds, wreaked havoc in the northwest region of Massachusetts. This is a tale of conspiracies, disinformation, lies, and darkness older than life itself. Inside Mount GREYLOCK, evil takes its form. GREYLOCK, an absolutely terrifying series created by Rob Gavagan, is a series of archives and tapes focusing on strange occurrences around Berkshire County, specifically a location called Mount GREYLOCK. I honestly didn't even know that it was an actual location until I watched the series, and to be honest with you, it immersed me more than I felt comfortable with. In this series, we're confronted with concepts of horror familiar to us, but done in such an effective way that it burrows into your psyche, leaving you completely vulnerable to your own thoughts. Tonight on this video, we're going to take a deep look at these tapes, step by step, pick up the pieces as well as we can, and figure out what kind of darkness lurks in the heart of both Mount GREYLOCK and mankind itself. Just as quickly as the madness of GREYLOCK begins, we're introduced to an automated voice beginning routine sequences, giving visuals of a defunct facility slowly rising from its apparently prolonged slumber.
Welcome to Semiodyne USA Enhanced Access Operations. Please enter your clearance credentials.
Given the sense that we absolutely don't belong here, an unseen presence requests access from the system, only to be rejected suddenly from unknown identification. An override is given, and whoever or whatever this may be begins a data extraction sequence.
Clearance credential requirement overridden. Administrator privileges granted. Welcome back, unknown user ID. What would you like to do? Accessing archival storage form, GBA. Data extraction initiated.
Unbeknownst to the viewer at the time, we're given our first slight introduction to Semiodyne USA, a corporation with deep ties to the government and a key player in this story. One thing to note, which I found strange at the time of watching this, with absolutely no idea, going in blind, the first system heard to kick online, to me, was the culinary systems.
Primary systems online.
I can make a wager that an important research facility would probably prioritize some type of life support or containment system, maybe even security, over food, but it definitely kind of stuck out to me. Whether or not this has relevance yet remains to be seen so far. We also note that the camera feed keeps trying to gain access to footage from the morgue. But why would it need access to the morgue? Regardless, it's clear though that this person, I'll explain later, is keen on recovering information or data from this facility. And it's more likely that the tapes we're witnessing are in fact the data being recovered. To the mountain starts with someone driving down a desolate road at night, blanketed in snow. We can hear the person is listening to a religious broadcast. However, this just happens to be more than some random midnight sermon.
Virgin who discussed this at length in a sermon all the way back in 1864.
This is very clever foreshadowing. A fire and brimstone sermon for the absolute terror that lies ahead. Now, if you're familiar with theological and biblical studies, the preacher is reciting quotes from the book of Matthew. More specifically, it's quotes from Charles Spurgeon's famous sermon, Tempted of the Devil. Although it differs from the original sermon slightly, it's this haunting line that hangs over us like the impending shadow looming over Mount GREYLOCK that will stick with you for the rest of this series.
We are not to enter the thicket in search of the lion. We may pay dear.
We are not to enter the thicket in search of the lion, lest we pay dearly for what we may find. Even 2 videos in, it's clear already that we're approaching the thicket, and we may find out we are already face to face with the lion. Switching now from the road to what appears to be the base of the mountain or some forested area, the person trods through while an indistinct, garbled voice can be heard. From both watching the series and doing some research in making this video, I've learned that the voice tells a story of a group of hikers who, while trekking through the surrounding area, had come across an eviscerated corpse of an animal, ichor and flesh thrown around the vicinity, most likely by a local predator. It would be perfectly normal up there, until one of them found a human skull sitting amongst the remains. It's interesting to me to note that the footage interlaced with the voice, as it seems to glitch in and out of what could only be assumed to be reality, mirrors the events of the story being told, perhaps maybe even manifesting itself through some unknown force. The person filming comes across a strange object lodged in a tree, what appears to be some sort of tape, maybe even disc. But instead of a shocking discovery, we're cut back to the road. This time, however, something is off, way off.
Should make it easier on yourself and accept what it is that he bestows upon you.
At first, to me, it's almost as if this isn't the person filming who's now sitting in the car, but someone or something completely different altogether. Instead of getting the hell out of Dodge as fast as possible, it seems that this person is almost trying to relearn the functions of the car. The high beams shut on and off repeatedly, and suddenly a loud banging noise can be heard, and I almost interpreted this as they punched the console in frustration. A quick cut ensues, and now we're moving at a breakneck speed down the road. The radio, clearly affected by what had happened to the console, is now distorted. The sermon continues, and it's also apparent now that we're hit with more foreshadowing through the preacher's fiery oration.
He will unravel you, bit by bit. The devil has a plan for you.
Even in and of itself, this is beyond unnerving. I want to take a second to explain that the devil takes many forms. And in this video, you'll see exactly why those 2 lines have so much weight. I mentioned in a prior video, the one about John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, when I was talking about Prince of Darkness, the idea of having Satan as a traditional devil doesn't hold so much weight as, say, the personification of evil, the anti-god, if you will. Going to be really important in this series. Moving on, we come to Orientation Protocol, the 3rd tape of the series. While most of the GREYLOCK footage deals in the classic vague and ominous style of storytelling, this next video gives us a huge amount of critical information to the tale, and even more, a look into what we might be dealing with. This information, or most likely training tape of some kind, is military in origin or government-related in origin, and is addressed to one Alexander Michael Marsh. Remember that name. Also, incredibly important to note, the date at the bottom of the warning notice, which reads January 2nd, 1993. Dates are going to be really important in this series. This will also be the second time we're formally greeted by our friends over in Semiodyne, the R&D company from the first video, of which this tape labeled TF1 is manufactured by. There's already plenty to take in. It's a testing tape for a research installation codenamed Unit 13, part of a project called Stargate. We, through the eyes of Alexander, are congratulated by being selected as a test subject for this project, which deals in expanding on the powers of both psychic variety and the unconscious mind.
Congratulations on your selection as one of our testing candidates. You likely have a lot of questions, and this video is designed to answer them all. First, let's go over some background information to provide you with the crucial context you'll need for a full understanding of what it is we're doing at Unit 13. We are sure you've heard plenty of rumors surrounding what it is that we do, but we are willing to bet that most everything you've heard is wrong. Being a highly confidential part of Project Stargate, which you've already been briefed on, Unit 13 studies a revolutionary and promising area of parapsychology, thought forms.
Fun fact, Stargate was actually a project by the US government declassified in 1995, which also dealt with similar theories and experiments, including weaponization of psychokinesis and other psychic powers. What they found here in Unit 13, though, was tangible and much, much more sinister. Another belief rooted in real-life tulpas, or as the series calls them, thought forms. The thought forms in GREYLOCK are very much real, as Semiodyne and the US government have found a way to conjure or manifest them. I really like the little detail about how ghosts can be perceived as thought forms, as this gives us a plausible theory about ghost spirits and their existence.
Manipulating electronics, or even speaking words in short phrases. Due to their striking similarities, a current theory established by Unit 13 suggests that what we know as ghosts may not be as common as we once believed. Rather than a deceased person's energy being left behind after death, it's possible, and indeed likely, that these paranormal entities are actually thought forms that are unintentionally created by those individuals that the deceased has left behind, who spend inordinate amounts of time in deeply emotional states, where their mental capacity is largely occupied by a powerful focus on the departed individual.
Even though it is said to take a considerable amount of sheer will and concentration to manifest one, fret not. Semiodyne's got an answer for that.
With cutting-edge technology and engineering methods, we've created a groundbreaking, proprietary invention. Introducing the Thought Form Manifester. The Thought Form Manifester is able to create truly independent and self-sustaining thought form entities from the minds of select, willing participants.
The aptly named Thought Form Manifester, created by the workers at Unit 13 and a doctor by the name of Bernard Hayes, also remember that name, gives limitless possibilities of manifestation, from human to animal and even abstract thoughts or emotions. This was a major red flag for me in watching the series. It's clear that we are being lied to. That not only are thought forms safely contained in holding areas, but are completely docile and harmless. Remember, as the tape states, if you can think it, you can manifest it. That means anything. These containment areas meant to hold thought forms, I think this was grossly misunderestimated, or worse, a lie. You're gonna find out about that here real soon. A coworker of mine once told me the scariest thing you'll find in your house is another person you don't know. And oh boy, does this video do that to a T. We're shown initially in Unexpected Visitors a POV shot of a mysterious person prowling around outside an unknown house at night. It becomes clear that this person's intentions aren't good at all as they sneak into the house via a window. Their intentions are actually even worse than we thought they would be. A brief shot of stairs leading to the second level of the house, most likely a bedroom. Then the screen cuts to black, and we're met with some of the most blood-curdling screams I've ever heard. Even only a third of the way into this video, and we're assaulted with theories and questions. What is the relevance to this video? Are thought forms being manifested to break into houses and murder innocent people? And what the hell is the relevance of this shot? Is this just someone who's completely lost it, randomly looking up at the moon as if answering an unheard call from a phantom force? The cut to the Max Headroom promo isn't just a nod to internet mysteries and analog horror, and it actually has relevance and importance to this story. This particular episode of Max Headroom aired in 1987, so now we not only have a timeline to build around, but some rather eerie inconsistencies. As I mentioned earlier, the third tape could be traced back to 1993, in which the narrator of said tape explains that the facility holds thought forms. So herein lies the problem that I'm having. If the Berkshire County break-ins happened in 1987 and implementation of containing thought forms didn't exist until potentially 1993, this leaves two possible theories so far. One, the tape was lying, had always lied, and thought forms can not only break out of their containment cells, but are also clearly dangerous. Two, the tape wasn't lying, to an extent, and someone or something released the thought forms. Now, the answer to one of those questions in regards to this specific tape, Unknown Visitors, is yes, there is a group of people or things breaking into houses around several counties, as we're now shown a cut to an emergency broadcast from the police.
We interrupt our current program at the request of the Massachusetts State Police. This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. All normal broadcasting has been discontinued during the...
The assailants are unidentified, but we know now that this is clearly some type of coordinated attack.
For northern Berkshire County, Massachusetts, after the following tone.
At 3:34 a.m., Massachusetts State Police confirmed the presence of a potential group of active and unidentified home invaders who have targeted 49 residences since approximately 11:15 p.m. last night. The attacks appear to be random, spanning across the towns of North Adams, Cheshire, Savoy, and Windsor. Residents are urged to take...
Okay, this right here, before I get into this scene, it's easily one of the best jump scares in any video, anything. It nails it perfectly. You know something's coming, and instead of music, the creator uses those eerie screams coming from the distant forest as both a distraction and almost a type of suspenseful buildup. Whoever is filming after the broadcast is shown is not only watching or listening to the broadcast itself, as we can faintly hear it in the background, as they try to pinpoint an origin of the hellish screams emanating from the forest. A gloved hand reaches through the window, followed by disturbing imagery. But what is this exactly? Through most of the imagery, we're given a glimpse, clear as day, of a nondescript, seemingly porcelain mask riddled with cracks. After watching this series through its entirety, we'll learn that this, whatever it is something crucial to whatever the hell is happening on Mount GREYLOCK. I almost had to turn off this series and rethink doing it after this episode, and for personal reasons, I won't say. This tape was one of the creepiest, darkest parts in the series, and it does deal with a pretty heavy topic. We're introduced to another prominent figure in this series, a woman named Tiffany Crisaldi, who is getting a routine checkup on an unborn child. At first glance, everything seems perfectly normal. Interestingly enough, we overhear Tiffany talking to the nurse, answering a question about the child's potential name.
And have you decided on a name for your baby boy yet?
Yep, we're going with Max.
Ooh, Max, huh? That's a nice, strong name.
Max. Oddly specific and uncanny, wouldn't you say?
There he is. He's definitely a growing boy, that's for sure. And you're both looking really good.
Oh, I love hearing that.
Let's get some measurements to see exactly how much he's grown.
The baby just vanishes from her womb, and in the panic, they attempt to go grab another ultrasound machine, citing technical difficulties with the prior one. The nurse leaves and Tiffany begins sobbing uncontrollably, but through this we can hear the nurse talking to the doctor outside the office.
What are you talking about?
No.
This can't be happening. The baby doesn't know why. That makes no sense.
The doctor states something shocking and odd, that this just happened at exactly the same time to someone else in the hospital as well. In regards to those glitches that you also see right before the baby disappears, we're greeted yet again by a very familiar face, cracked, pallid mask. It's starting to become more and more clear that we have a definitive malicious force working behind the scenes. There's also two articles that appear, the first one being almost a blink and you'll miss it moment, and the other one is more of a clue in our story. In the first article, we're given a story about the recent break-ins, meaning this was a recent event, and it puts this video in about the same year that the pregnancy phenomenon happens. It says in the article, the police have yet to reveal the identities of the assailants, although, to me at least, right now it's pretty obvious what it is. The second is more of a clue, and more specifically regarding Tiffany's fiance. You know, that name that I told you to remember? Yeah, Alexander Michael Marsh, guy who was volunteering for the project in the TF1 video. All that being said, it's one of the few entries in an analog horror series that actually rattled me, and with the context of this horror series in mind, it's an incredibly dark and amazing hook. The horror is visceral, and there's no blood, no gore, nothing. It's simply an attack on our subconscious, a reoccurring motif in GREYLOCK that fuels one of the biggest theories I have about the series. Should have let sleeping dogs lie. Man, if there was ever a title in an episode foreshadowing the overarching themes and plot, this would be it. Do you remember Dr. Hayes? Well, this episode opens up with Hayes making a speech at the North American Council of Thought on October 4th, 1981. On the topics of Jungian psychology, Hayes states the following.
Humanity has fought tirelessly past through a great many trials of intellectual fortitude to achieve but one singular goal. A goal that countless men withered away and dying in pursuit of, leaving their towers of work behind, to be climbed by coming generations. Higher and higher they ascend, so that we will at last reach the one called God. And there, on his apex of infinite knowledge and power, we will approach and look him in the eye.
As an equal.
I'm gonna go ahead and sidetrack here for a second, but this is really important to remember too. Several other horror analysis videos, specifically both by Curmudgeon and Monoxa, Jungian psychology deals with a critical component in GREYLOCK's story, the subconscious thought and the unconscious mind. More specifically, the shadow. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the shadow is an archetype representing the unconscious part of the mind that holds repressed ideas, desires, and shortcomings. Basically, this shadow, the shadow of ourselves, represents desires and ideas locked away in the further regions of our unconscious. These could be yearnings of relationships or actions we can never have, and perhaps most importantly to this series, violent acts we cannot dole out. There's also a point in this speech where Hayes mentions gazing at the face of God and looking into his eyes as equals, but in the grand scheme of anything horror, specifically cosmic horror, this was never meant to be attained. Some doors are better closed, and yet in mankind's hubris, we choose to pick the locks of our own demise. The speech then cuts off and we go to a Semiodyne loading screen, and we're given a series of events dealing with both Semiodyne and a company called Moretti Construction, who have most likely been contracted out to build Unit 13's facility or something else entirely. We're also met again by this currently unknown investigator or person using the system admin privileges we heard in the first video. The system addresses us as a Frank Porter, though it's clear that this isn't the person. Frank, as seen in the beginning portion of this video, has hired Moretti Construction to help aid in building a redacted facility, take a guess where, and has several messages from the owner, Paul Moretti. From March 24th to March 30th, Paul had sent 9 phone messages to Frank, and wow, wouldn't you know it, the year was also 1987. Seems like a lot of fun shit happened there that year. I kind of wish I could have been there to witness it all. Anyways, this facility is clearly the Semiodyne facility housing the Thoughtform project. It's what they didn't expect to find in the mountain, or perhaps might have, that, well, kind of derails things.
Message 1. March 24th, 11:14 a.m.
Hey Frank, it's Paul Moretti. We ran into somewhat of an issue today. We came across these tunnels inside the mountain, pretty deep in, but well, this is gonna sound a little crazy, but he told me to call if anything strange came up, and I figured this qualifies. People have been here before. Some obviously man-made shit in there, like carvings and stone. This shit looks ancient, like real old. I took a crew in to look through it, but since part of the tunnels caved in some time ago, we're gonna just have to bust through it regardless. But I still wanted to make you aware of it. Anyways, I'll keep you in the loop. Thanks.
In the first message, the discovery of tunnels and man-made artifacts deep within prompts Paul to immediately contact Frank, and we're given confirmation that this is, in fact, Mount GREYLOCK, where they are building the Unit 13 facility. Even with this amazing and somewhat unnerving revelation, the men continue digging deep into the tunnel.
Message 2. March 25th, 7:38 a.m.
Hey Frank, it's Paul. Just calling to tell you the day might be a bit slower than usual. Unfortunately, a number of the crew are sick as dogs. Not really sure what kind of stomach bugs going around or what, but we'll do our best to pick up slack. I'm calling in some guys who have a day off, so hopefully things will get a little closer to normal, you know? That being said, I don't know how the hell this happened, but the section of the tunnel here caved in is clear. The tunnel's been wired up with a few lights, too. Wanted to see if maybe you sent someone in while we were off shift. My crew said you didn't, but, you know, I didn't see anybody else either, so... But a few of the guys said they'd seen something running around in the woods surrounding the site. I figured it's probably a deer or whatever, but seeing all the ruckus we're making out here, you know? But they all insisted it was something else. Something like a real tall man. Might just be some environmentalist moron trying to cause some shit, but, you know, he ain't done nothing, so I told him to keep focused on the project. For safety's sake, we're going to avoid the tunnel until I hear back from you. All right, bye now.
Two interesting developments in the second message. One, the crew was set upon by an unknown illness, causing work to be delayed. The other, however, is more ominous to say the least. Paul notes that a section of tunnel that had been previously caved in has now been cleared by unknown personnel or means, and that even lights had been set up. Paul's crew, clearly confused about this, asks Paul if someone else had come down prior and cleared it. His crew also notes that they had been seeing a strange shadowy figure running around the tree line by the camp at night, stalking and observing the crew. They assume it might be a deer, but the crew swears up and down that it isn't any animal. A real tall man, they say. 10 hours later from the second message, Frank sends a man to take pictures of the tunnel that had been recently cleared out, but when he had returned, he was violently ill, with most of Paul's crew having to carry the man out.
Fine when he got here, but we practically had to carry him back to his car when he was done. I don't know if he caught whatever's going around, but...
The crew, regardless of this still, pushes deeper into the mine, only to find even more artifacts. A member of Paul's crew, a man named Arnold Rivers, reveals that he was a prior archaeologist, and when he reveals this information, Frank has him go down and write reports and submit it directly to Frank and Semiodyne regarding their findings. Also, somewhat strange, but I digress. That same exact afternoon, another message goes out, with Paul sounding completely shaken and unnerved.
Frank, something ain't right here. Crew's getting worse, more sick. I feel okay so far, but I don't know how long that's gonna last. I saw that thing the guys have been talking about last night, stalking around in the tree line. I swear it had a face. Anyways, just call me back as soon as you can, Frank.
He too had seen whatever figure the men had seen, and the way he describes it, he's convinced it's clearly not a deer. By the time we hear the fifth message, it's clear that desperation had set in.
PM. All our food is rotten, totally spoiled and covered in maggots. It was perfectly fine and stored. There wasn't any problems with the generator, even if we lost power. I mean, it's the end of March. All our food looks like it's been left out in the heat for weeks. No idea what's going on. Please call me back.
The crew's food had become rotten in an unknown way, and Paul frantically begs Frank for any response. Why hasn't Frank reached out yet? This is just a simple construction operation, right? He should be checking on the safety and the progress of the workers. My guess is this isn't just a construction operation. This is something much, much more. Maybe Semiodyne just didn't want to get their hands dirty with whatever they were trying to unearth at the bottom of Mount GREYLOCK.
It's Paul. We saw it again. Something out here with us. It's in the woods. And it's watching us, goddammit. It ain't no animal either. Who are you guys gonna put up those fancy hunting cameras and see if we can catch anything? Maybe locals fucking with us? I don't know.
Taken on the same day as the fifth message, Paul's crew decides to set up hunting cameras in the adjacent woods, hoping to figure out whatever is stalking them. We cut to the hunting cameras, which are also revealed to be motion activated, looking out into the woods. However, nothing is seen. An unknown glitch causes an error on the seventh message, but it is worth noting that this project is in fact the site for Unit 13, as if it wasn't obvious enough already. The footage that follows also gives us something important. The cameras have picked up more motion, however, the only thing we see is a strange mist passing by the cameras. Kinda looks like something we've seen before, right? If we go back to the TF1 tape, one of those pictures looks identical to whatever this strange mist is that appears on the camera screen. The following night, Paul calls Frank yet again, fear and panic clearly more audible in his voice than last time.
Holy shit, well, a lot of the crew here is sick now, and they're sort of unresponsive. We tried emergency contacts for them, but they just keep ringing. The phones, they just kept ringing and ringing and ringing. Nobody picked up from any number we tried. Nobody picked up. No answer machines either. Made a call to the hospital and same thing. Just ringing. Just tried 911, still nothing. I figured the phones were fucked up, but the machine actually picked up. I think I caught whatever's going around. My skin, it feels tight. A lot of pressure behind my eyes. My teeth feel like they're humming, vibrating. You know what? This all started when we came across that tunnel. I feel like I need to figure out what's down there. I think whatever's down there could help my crew, but most of all, I feel like something really bad's gonna happen if I don't go down, so I'm going down tonight.
Now, I mentioned earlier that Semiodyne, and more specifically Frank Porter, knew something was up at the site, and this only confirms my theory. Paul, initially healthy throughout the first 7 messages, has clearly been infected with whatever sickness the rest of the crew had got, and whether through fear or curiosity, decides now to investigate. The camera also picks up this. Yeah, that's clearly a thought form. The final message. No time, only a date. March 30th.
Message 9. March 30th, time unavailable. This is the end of your messages.
Paul and his crew have now succumbed to whatever it is that they released underneath the mountain, or whatever sickness had afflicted them. The combination of screaming and the slow, distorted audio of "This is the end," which has a distinct pause, is horrifying to say the least. The hunting cam picks up something again, and guess who it is? It's the same exact figure, that damned pallid, cracked mask that not only was stalking the crew, but has stalked us throughout the last few tapes. This thing, whatever it may be, is making its presence more and more known. And part of me wonders if this was what actually escaped from the depths of Mount GREYLOCK, or perhaps was even born from it. There's a lot to unpack here so far, even with just 6 videos. So while I'd love to carry on, I kind of want to take a quick break here and get you guys up to speed and recap before things, well, get worse. So far, it seems that these tapes are archival footage, or from the perspective of someone just like us trying to expose or reveal the happenings around Mount GREYLOCK. Although there are a few time jumps within the 6 videos so far, we can begin to piece together a discernible time frame, at least for now, putting us between 1987 and 1995, with so far Sleeping Dogs being the first of the videos. The crew building Unit 13 had discovered artifacts and drawings deep below Mount GREYLOCK, signaling a human presence that could predate any known history. More on that later. Semiodyne, with all the current facts laid out, cannot be trusted at all, especially given the context of Dr. Hayes' speech at the council meeting. I also firmly believe that they are in fact way out of their league, given the current situation, as they are meddling with something that really can't be quantified, much less controlled. Through Semiodyne's reckless endeavors, or perhaps planned endeavors, the surrounding counties have been beset by horrifying events, leading to deaths, disappearances, and even babies straight up vanishing from their mother's wombs. Now this thing right here, the pallid mask, as I've been calling it, is something of an enigma so far in this story. It appears in multiple videos, and wherever it goes, calamity ensues. I have a theory which I won't discuss until the very end, but let's just say it's a progenitor of sorts to thought forms. With all that in mind, let's continue down this trail of darkness. I'm gonna do these 2 next videos together. They both tie into each other so much that Tape 7 ends right where Tape 8 begins. In Back to Normal, Tape 7, we begin by watching a news broadcast 2 weeks after the break-in incident, hosted by a reporter named Dawn Wright. The news report reveals that the police have identified the unknown assailants, that of an anti-American militia group. Strangely enough, there's no name to be given in regards to this group. Kind of reeks of cover-ups already.
Since confirmed that the attacks were in fact part of an organized criminal effort and have been attributed to a local anti-American militia group operating out of western Massachusetts called... Police have made numerous arrests in connection to militia, and officials continue to release statements to assure the public that they are safe once again.
We've seen a lot of credible information over the past couple of weeks, and the investigation's still ongoing. We'll get closer.
I believe that it is in fact a cover-up, seeing as that Semiodyne has the U.S. Army in its back pocket.
Back to normal. Back to normal. Back to normal. To normal. To normal. To normal.
Never mind, I was wrong.
Residents of Berkshire County.
As if it wasn't obvious enough, the broadcast has been manipulated, showing several key pieces of info. We get a photograph of both Alex Marsh and Tiffany Crisaldi sitting together, lamenting the loss of their unborn son, a callback to tape 5. Immediately after, and more importantly, we're shown a brief flash of a newspaper clipping. This article discusses a man named Jim Melgren, a former cop turned PI, and just as important to the story, has a radio show centered around the government being more transparent, as in exposing shadow governments. It seems to me that not only is a new player to the story of Greylock introduced, but this might very well be the person investigating the events themselves, as we're witnessing his first-hand account of everything. Outside of his own investigative tools, he's been using the admin access he acquired in the first video to unlock the secrets of Greylock. Shadows? Check. Conspiracies? Check. Goddamn, this series really is something special. The account that Jim Melgren lays out in the article is as follows. The events are only the tip of the iceberg. There are horrifying reports of people, healthy grown adults, becoming deformed, growing extra limbs, teeth growing out of their scalp, people developing serious medical conditions, or even... Well, that explains the clip of the Siamese baby. At least what I'm gathering so far between the association of thought forms and whatever Jim is describing at this point is that take a look at teratomas, for instance. Now, amplify that on an extreme level, and this kind of seems like tulpas, or in this series, thought forms, trying to separate themselves from the afflicted, only failing to do so. It's an interesting theory, but I'm not entirely subscribed to it. But my real question is this. So far, we only have 2 names involved with Unit 13 at its heart. Alex, and to a degree, Tiffany. At least that we know of so far. How is anyone else out there, whether they're involved with Unit 13 or not, affected by its influence? The final part of this tape segues into tape 8 perfectly, but it shows a heavily distorted image of Don Wright, his face horribly decayed and disfigured with the word liar next to it. Nothing is as it seems. Nothing is back to normal. The next video, Old Odd Ends, begins with a GBS standby citing technical difficulties, followed by a complete ass-chewing of 2 producers by a GBS executive named Alan Rosenbaum.
The fuck happened?
We're looking into it, sir, but we experienced no issues with the broadcast on our end, so our engineers believe that the signal was hijacked before even reaching the transmitter, but once we started receiving phone calls from viewers, we switched to a backup transmitter.
But by then, the hijacker had already said everything they wanted to say, hadn't they?
Yes, sir.
What a complete fuck-up. They made us look like a fucking joke. And during our most popular show. Speaking of which, Don, where the fuck is he? I cannot get hold of him, and he needs to get in here and read a statement to help clean up this fucking mess.
Well, we've been trying to reach him. We've called him multiple times. We've tried his pager. We've asked around to see if anyone's heard from him, but nothing. Right now we've got Gerald standing in for him tonight if Don doesn't show.
You've been to his house?
Well, no. I just thought that maybe he'd be upset if I did that.
Get in your fucking car and go to his fucking house. I don't care if you kick down his front door and drag him here by his ear. You bring him into the studio. Do you understand?
Yes, Mr. Rosenbaum. Of course. I'll do that right now.
There's some real powerful people depending on us right now. They need us to manage the response to these events, to let the public know what's going on, and the last thing we need is it going wider than it already fucking has. So do what you need to do, or I'm gonna replace you with some producers who actually know how to produce a fucking show.
The first thing that caught my attention was his mention of a CIA liaison, signifying that there is in fact government presence in the area of Berkshire and Mount GREYLOCK, most likely trying to cover up the situation. Must be the powerful people that he eventually mentions are counting on them to get the story straight. Alan, who is clearly pissed off, demands one of the producers to go get Don Wright, curious about his whereabouts, because the producer explains that Dan hasn't been picking up his phone and is not in the studio right now.
Warning, anomalous file detected. This file should not exist. Are you sure you wish to proceed? Opening
File. Arnold Rivers personal log.
Final.
Well, that's an interesting transition. Looks like Jim here has gained access to a previously deleted file, as we're told this file should not exist. We're also introduced to Arnold Rivers, the archaeologist mentioned in the Sleeping Dogs video.
Arnold Eugene Rivers. The date is April 8th, 1987, about 9:15 at night. I was involved in the Morelli construction project at Mount GREYLOCK. I was hired due to my background in anthropology and archaeology. I've worked to excavate a number of different historical sites. Paul Morelli took me on after securing a government contract for the GREYLOCK project. I'm recording this because I believe my life is in danger, and I likely don't have a lot of time left, so I need to leave some kind of record of my findings. On March 24th, our crew came across tunnels in the mountain that held a multitude of ancient markings and artifacts. On March 25th, Paul cleared the interior of the mountain and asked me, accompanied by a small crew, to look through the tunnels and record notes on what I was able to recognize. I was then to report to one of the project directors, named Frank Porter, to offer my perspective on our findings. I kept this to myself at the time, but what we discovered in that mountain was not normal.
So now we're finally given a deep insight into what Arnold discovered and was able to index in the mines. It's the extent of these findings, however, that really shed light onto how deep and complex the horrors of GREYLOCK go. Once again, the titles and the videos have more weight than you thought. Don Wright had claimed everything was going back to normal. Arnold, however, well, what he found in the mines had him so shaken up that it was clearly anything but normal. Paleo-American cultures, pre-Columbian, ancient Chinese, Sumerian, even cultures predating written and known history. You know, with a setting like Massachusetts, I was kind of beginning to wonder when the creeping tendrils of cosmic horror would worm their way into this story. Looks like I'm starting to have my answer. What the hell has been driving these cultures to Mount GREYLOCK to give offerings? Once again, I have my theories, but we're still too early to dive into, shit, there it is. Yep, cosmic horror reference. We're shown an interruption of a GBS show named Cosmic Mysteries detailing the creation of the moon. As its relevance to the series seems rather out of place, it's not, and I'll explain this as follows. Many scientists believe that the moon, which should be much smaller in comparison with the Earth, was created by some unnamed rogue planet colliding with ours, splintering the impact point like a cosmic slug from the universe's 12 gauge. While one of those chunks, as hypothesized by these scientists, became the moon, there's reason to believe that fragments of this planet had embedded themselves in the Earth's hide, like shrapnel. This is important to remember at the end, so bear with me here. Another cut, and this time it's a 911 call from Liam Hollander, the producer sent to Don Wright's residence. He reports a break-in at Don's house.
Okay, Liam, you said this was your coworker's house. What is your coworker's address?
It's Parker Hill Road in Adams, number 491.
491 Parker Hill Road, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me, is anybody hurt? Liam, are you still with me?
Yes, sorry.
Is anybody hurt?
Yes.
The broadcast shown earlier wasn't a live broadcast. It was a premonition. Don was found dead in his house, his face mutilated in the same exact way it was shown in Back to Normal. We then return back to Arnold, who begins depicting discoveries even further in the mountain, confirming ritual altars of both animal and human sacrifice. This discovery, along with the undecipherable sigils adorning the ritual chamber, were enough to make Arnold visibly sick, so much that he was in fact questioning existence itself. The tunnels are clearly having a mental effect on Arnold, who states he hasn't felt right since going in there. This, coupled with a growing sense of paranoia after delivering these findings to none other than Frank Porter, was enough for Arnold to make a pretty obvious decision to never go down there again. No price could be put on his health and life, and to be fair, we'd probably all make that decision. The file that follows after this details the survivors of the Moretti incident, and I can't really see how these things could be labeled as survivors. Former shells of human beings, malformed and mutated into nothing short of monsters, maniacal and cannibalistic, some even refusing death itself or spewing volatile bile at staff members, most likely Semiodyne researchers. It comes back to Arnold, who goes on to detail the events we become familiar with happening around the mountain at the time, including a previously undisclosed incident of bodies raining from the sky. The connections between what happened in the mines and what's going on in Berkshire County and the area surrounding Mount GREYLOCK is pretty conclusive to Arnold, so he decides to share his findings with a private investigator. Guess who that is? Well, Arnold was right about one thing. He had every right to be paranoid. As he begins to disclose strange events happening around at his own house, there's the bone-chilling sound of a door being opened. The basement door.
Just talking about it. This can't be. Oh my god, that's the basement door. No. Camcorder. Oh, where's the damn camcorder?
Arnold is no longer alone in his own house now. He hid in his closet, his last words being that of a plea to deliver the information and files to Jim Melgren.
Come on out, it's the police.
His assailant is none other than the thing in the pallid, cracked mask. Whatever this thing is, it's given an entirely new layer now. We knew it had sentience back in Sleeping Dogs, but this is something completely different. It waited for him, hiding silently in the basement, awaiting patiently for the right time to strike. It even used mimicry as a form to try and lure him out of the closet, and most chillingly, that of a small child saying, "It's a monster." This video, no pun intended, seems to tie up some old odd ends. We've learned more about Jim's involvement, what they had found in the mines, and most of all, potentially what the creature in the pallid mask is. Just one more burning question for now. Where the hell does Semiodyne fit into all of this? Tape 9 starts off with a new date and a very familiar voice, one that we haven't heard for a hot minute. That of an early GBS broadcast, describes a project called the National Access Initiative. The date, however, is really what begins to set this video apart. It's December 1963, meaning that this would be the earliest date we have been given so far. Just like Unit 13 has real-life ties to Project Stargate, this initiative, the National Access Initiative, given the date, has major ties to reality as well. At the time, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president that took over following JFK's assassination, had a program in place that he called the Great Society, a series of domestic programs that aimed to address economic inequality, improve education, and promote civil rights. The National Access Initiative seeks to put critical electronics and vital communication tools in every American household. Keep in mind, this was also the height of the Cold War. something already seems incredibly suspicious about this. There would be radios, televisions, smoke alarms, anything you can think of would be placed into households across the US. You're probably asking yourself at this point in the video, how will this be supplied to these households? Shouldn't be too hard to figure that one out, or, just wait a while. The answer is given here in a few moments.
Increasing technological dependence. These electronics packages are being made available to American households through a partnership with world-renowned technology manufacturer Semiodyne USA.
And the plot thickens, and we have breadcrumbs leading to one of the biggest questions so far. Semiodyne, who, at this point it shouldn't be surprising that they have the government in their back pocket this early on, is the company responsible for spearheading the National Access Initiative, with even more evidence provided now than ever before. They've been at this for a very, very long time, and to be honest, your guess is as good as mine for how far Semiodyne's timeline actually goes back. Another outstanding nod to tying in historical events within this series are the two brief newspaper clippings we see. One of them says Kennedy says no to Semiodyne USA, and that plays in well with Kennedy's known thoughts on surveillance and government regulation of the people. The second details an infamous event all too familiar with Americans, one that shaped US history for decades to come. Why would this have any relevance? What does Kennedy's assassination have to do with this? The one thing that America stood against at the time, something associated with the police states of the Soviet Union, America's sworn enemy in the Cold War. Semiodyne, for whatever reason, took advantage of this opportunity, installing cameras in every individual piece of tech installed in American homes. This high-quality, cutting-edge tech deployed by the company is just another way for them to watch with ever-hungry eyes, as if performing some eldritch reconnaissance on the average person. We cut to a speech given by one Percival C. Rothwell, the president of Semiodyne. I'm gonna let this one play for the full effect.
The National Access Initiative represents a milestone in our nation's journey towards progress and inclusivity. It's a reflection of the American government and Semiodyne USA's unwavering commitment to empower every American citizen, regardless of age, location, or income, with the tools and resources needed to thrive in the electronic age.
It's convincing enough, but it's the secret conversation that happens next. It completely opens the floodgates.
I'll let you in on a little something.
I'm here. Kennedy didn't go for it. But you assured me he was amenable. Or was that just more of your bullshit? No? He's gonna fucking expose our whole plan for the NII program. The meeting couldn't have gone worse. If that fucking Nick thinks he's gonna expose Semiodyne, he's got another thing coming. But we're not the only ones he's pissed off lately. After rejecting Operation Northwoods, and then that executive order involving the Federal Reserve, there are a lot of snakes in the grass. And it's about time that Kennedy got bit.
It wasn't a sleeper agent nor a communist sympathizer that assassinated Kennedy. They may have been the scapegoat to pull the trigger, but after JFK promised to expose Semiodyne for what they truly were, we all know what happened afterwards. As the speech resumes, we're given a brief glimpse of this image. Although being red and for all intents and purposes pure and devoid of any imperfections, the masked figure bears a striking resemblance to the pallid cracked mask we've seen throughout the series. Even more interesting, the image is overlaid on top of Percival's face. One key piece of surveillance footage depicts a note with the following message: "The NAI program is a trap. They are watching, they are listening. Fuck LBJ, fuck Semiodyne. I won't be your lab rat anymore." This footage is also dated in the 90s, meaning that this program has been in operation for roughly 30 years. Whoever wrote this note still remains to be known. After some more footage, we're given another quick cut to a group of cloaked individuals standing in the forest, all wearing identical masks to the cracked masked entity. It's beginning to seem like there's an abyssal layer to Semiodyne's intentions, and I'm going to say that this is a huge part of my theory going forward. The final bits of footage show surveillance from a bedroom, and we're given the latest date in this entry, December 29th, 1994. We see this thing rise from the corner of the room, and, well, I'm also going to let this one play out. Just bear in mind, for those of you with kids or grew up having an imaginary friend, this will probably scare the shit out of you.
Hello? Hello? Is somebody there? Where are my glasses?
Katie.
Where are you?
I'm over here, Katie.
Oh, there you are. Who are you?
I'm your imaginary friend.
My imaginary friend? But I didn't imagine you.
You must have, because here I am. You probably just don't remember.
Are you from your doctor's office place that I had to go to?
I think you might be right, Katie.
I can't find my glasses, so I can't really see you.
Oh, they're over here.
How'd you get there?
I noticed they were a little dirty, so I wanted to clean them for you.
Really?
Yes, they look all shiny and new now. Here, come get them. Then you'll be able to see me.
Wow. Thank you. Where are they? I still can't really see because my eyes are so bad.
You reach out and I'll put them into your hand. Okay?
Okay.
Closer. Just a little bit closer.
The little girl in the video, Katie, falls prey to what I can only assume to be a thought form of some kind, this one showing signs of intelligence not unlike the cracked pallid mask. Posing as her imaginary friend, it lures her to her glasses and sheer violence ensues. It's worth noting too that Katie mentions that it must have come from the doctor's office, and I'm up on the air on whether this was Semiodyne's direct involvement or Dr. Hayes, used by Semiodyne to monitor and experiment on the residents of the area. It's also worth noting too that she says something very specific here. You're not what I imagined. One last bit of footage is shown, dated in 1987, where we learn that this is the house of Alexander Marsh and Tiffany Crisaldi. What we've learned so far in this video is immense. Deep in the dark forest, we're shown what appears to be the gloved figure from unexpected visitors in a first-person perspective again. It's confirmed later, but my initial guess with all the information presented so far is that this is in fact Jim Melgren. The person walks along until coming across a dead rat laying on the ground. Oddly enough, they pick it up as if this is what they were looking for all along. We go back to the last sequence of tape 9, only this time we can hear the entire message left from Alexander Marsh.
Hey, babe. I'm just checking in. Could you please give me a call as soon as you can? Don't worry about work either, please. You're way more important, okay? Okay. I love you. Bye.
We then cut to what appears to be interrogation footage. The footage details the impact on Alexander and, more specifically, Tiffany in regards to the loss of their unborn son. He would check in on her every day as this grief rattled her immensely and culminated into what we know now as the reason for her suicide. A strange glitch cuts us to some kind of ritualistic scene involving candles, followed by a brief message implying that Tiffany had now committed suicide. Afterwards, a login prompt pops up belonging to the Massachusetts chief medical examiner. We're witnessing the autopsy of Tiffany Crisaldi, and to no one's surprise, save for Dr. Heinrich Albert, the examiner, there's some anomalies in regards to Tiffany. From a black liquid seeping from her eyes and nose to a strange sigil carved into her abdomen post-mortem, there's clearly nothing normal about this cadaver. Tiffany may not have killed herself over grief, but rather someone, or perhaps something, may have killed her. The symbol carved into her sternum post-mortem is pretty indicative of this, and we find out in a few seconds that maybe Alex wasn't the only one involved with Unit 13 or Semiodyne's black plot. In the next segment of this tape, we're given a recorded dialogue of a very young Tiffany talking to an unnamed doctor. Although not confirmed, I have a gut feeling that this doctor may be someone very, very familiar in this series. A doctor that, say, has experience with Jungian psychology and happens to be on Semiodyne's payroll. It cuts back to the office of Heinrich, where he begins to address some strange happenings in his private log. Aside from electrical flickers, temperature spikes in the room mixed in with the already out-of-place curiosities involving Tiffany's corpse, it's what his assistant mentioned that had shaken him. Worse, it was the fact that he had heard them too.
After placing Miss Crisaldi in storage and moving on to cleaning up, my assistant Sarah mentioned that she'd heard what sounded like a woman crying, coming from the direction of the cooler. I shrugged off her remark and let her leave early, telling her she was likely stressed or overtired, and I continued cleaning up on my own. I didn't dare to tell her that I heard it as well.
Look, I'd really like to put words over this next segment, and I'm really trying my best not to just let the whole parts of an episode play out, but I'd be lying to you if I felt it was not important to just show you this part.
You feel comfortable. You feel safe. You are alone. You walk into a room, and that's when you can see something different that's never been there before. Tell me what you see.
It's a door next to my window.
That's right, it's a door. What does the door look like, Tiffany?
It looks black. It has weird marks on it. The wood looks weird.
Walk to the door and open it.
I'm scared.
It doesn't matter if you're scared. You must open the door. Good job, Tiffany. Now tell me what's on the other side of the door.
It's a small room. Somebody's in there.
No, Tiffany, you're alone.
No. There's someone here. He's facing away from me. He's standing and tall. He's very tall.
Tiffany, you are alone. Nobody else is there. Now tell me what else is in the room.
There's a TV. The screen is all fuzzy, and the tall man is watching it.
Tiffany, I want you to focus on removing the man from your mind.
When I snap my fingers, he will be gone. You will be alone.
The man's shaking. His body is cracking.
Okay, Tiffany, I'm going to count down from 5. When I snap my fingers, you will return to the real world. 5. You're feeling more awake
He's
now.
turning around.
4. Everything around you is becoming hazy.
He's looking at me. He sees me.
3, Tiffany, you can feel the chair you're sitting in again. 2, everything around you fades to the blackness behind your eyes. 1, full control of your body. 0, you're awake, Tiffany. You will return to reality now.
Now, back to the footage with Jim cutting open the rat package, which we now find has a tape stowed within it. The message, addressed to Jim, bears an eerily similar sigil, one that was found carved into the cold flesh of Tiffany's abdomen. Whoever these people are, be it Semiodyne or a cult pulling the strings behind the scenes, is aware of Jim's investigation. With that being said, it isn't entirely clear if they are a rival faction and planning to aid Jim, or merely toying with him. I'm going to go ahead with the latter on this one, as I still really believe Semiodyne is merely a front for something much, much worse. They operate as if they don't want to answer his questions, but instead tell him something important. With the surveillance state that Semiodyne currently operates under, I can kind of figure this as some sort of elusive coding, but I also really want to believe that their intention is to break Jim. Jim, all in all, seems to be the one thing standing between Semiodyne and their main goal, whatever it may be, and instead of outright killing him, they plan to break his mind and spirit. And we're given a glimpse of something that may merely just be using Tiffany's skin as a mask. Or, just like the workers up in the mines, she's come back. In this series, it's clear that there are fates worse than death. Really, the biggest question I have in this particular entry is why? We know Tiffany's connections with Unit 13, Semiodyne and the events around GREYLOCK, but we don't really know the weight her very existence carries. Clearly, they've been invested with her since early on, perhaps much earlier than we had initially thought, but what is her place in this? Is she just another wraith now under the control of an unnameable horror? One quick note, and I know it's pretty late in the video for this, but almost every video has some kind of description involving cryptic pseudo-biblical messages. While there's some that may have some relevance, I feel that, especially with this one, they are in fact tools meant to throw us off and confuse us. I've searched and dug around, yet haven't really found anything new or hasn't been covered yet by somebody else. In regards to Tiffany, however, and her involvement, I might have an answer for that. But first, we're gonna make some quick... basements again. Keep in mind, this video is probably the shortest of the bunch, but contrary to most that have covered it, I think there's a lot actually going on with this video. This GBS broadcast tells us we're about to watch a program regarding basement renovations. Except, well, I don't think this is a basement. It's a trap. A prison, even. Outside of the overlaid footage of the ritual from earlier and the tape being played of someone's heavily distorted weeping, I think there's something lost in all of this. To me, I think the weeping is in fact Tiffany's weeping. And while you would think this is a trap, whether laid by Jim or perhaps even Alex, not to imprison her, but keep her safe from others and herself, I think it's meant for someone, or something else entirely. In this video's description, it states the following: "What you so fear, so I am." With all that in mind, we're finally at the last video. Clocking in at over 30 minutes, there's a lot to unpack with this one. And holy crap, is this entry not only a lot to take in, this is a masterpiece of horror. This video starts out with an intro similar to Tape 3, however, it's who it's addressed to: Charlotte Jean Malgren. This is Jim's daughter. She was involved, and that's why this hits so close to home for him. The health warning posted at the beginning of the tape is also a fresh, if not incredibly ominous, change of pace to the TF1 tape. A new component is also introduced, a TF System Neurovisor headset, and we need both this and a writing utensil plus notepad to proceed with the viewing. Blending psychological components and technology, this is the second series of the TF tapes from Unit 13 in weaponizing their volunteers and breaching their darkest reaches of their own minds. What is interesting to note is the necessity of fear to be induced throughout this video, requiring all noise blocked, viewing after sundown, etc. for the program to work as intended.
Now is the time to make sure that your Neurovisor headset is correctly equipped and connected. If you need any assistance or are looking for more information regarding the Neurovisor, be sure to check the section titled Equipment and Connection in your Unit 13 Program Handbook. This will be your final opportunity to pause playback for the rest of this tape. Pausing after this point will cause a disruption, which could
carbonate your fucking skull.
Interrupt the data being collected by your headset.
Yeah, don't worry, I don't plan to pause this at all. I kinda like my brain pan in a non-pulverized state. I also like my pants in a non-shat state, so let's try and make it through this one normally, okay? After the countdown, the tape begins with an induction, which is also followed by a very necessary photosensitivity warning. I'm gonna follow everyone's lead here on this, and if you need to, skip to this part. I'm not really even photosensitive, and this was actually tough for me to watch. Also, Nowhere Found Broadcasting refuses to be responsible for any seizures or any other trauma the series is already induced on its viewers. Thank you for understanding.
Beginning induction. Please stare at your screen for 30 seconds.
Almost reminds me too of Real Sleep from Local 58, and it's just as effective. After this, induction is completed, and we move on to priming, where we begin to...
What the fuck is that?
You're gonna get really acquainted with our friend here in a second. I don't think this was put here by Unit 13. Although they mentioned that fear is a critical process for this to work, I think this thing is manifesting. The next psychological assessment, dubbed Outlier, tells us to pick a word out of 5 sets of 6 words, with 10 seconds between sets that doesn't fit with the theme of said set. God, that was a lot to say. The first, while obviously meant to be unnerving, is rope. The second, blood. It's not an organ. Remade, huh? Probably doesn't mean anything, but still. The veil between what's real and not is wearing thin, and outside influence is slowly seeping in from a malicious force, one that we're probably all familiar with at this point. The photo and article we also catch a quick glimpse of detail none other than Charlotte, who had opened a kennel for stray dogs. Surely no one with that pure of a heart would be in peril, right? The next set is shown, and while followed would seem the safe bet, I'm willing to put something down on visible being the outlier. Something about this series with what can be seen and what isn't seen seems to have some weight here. Another glitch happens, and the message we get is love contorts her flesh and bones. Oh boy. Next outlier and improved? Why is it that I feel that this one is rhetorical? I don't think any of these are outliers, and while obviously improved would be the outlier, it feels too specifically placed to be an outlier. Anyways, before we get the next set, we're greeted with another message, this one both horrifying and almost heartbreaking. As if it wasn't bad enough, a missing persons poster can be seen with the same exact image of Charlotte Melgren we saw before. Yet again, another intentionally placed outlier. It's you, but I don't think this is part of the exercise anymore. I think that this is actually a message. The brief clip in the glitch following this shows camera footage from Paul Moretti's fateful exploration in the tunnels below Greylock, and outside of the dates mentioned, I'm kinda curious to know what DIA recovered footage means. Obviously, this is recovered footage, but who or what is the DIA? Once the glitch occurs, we're given a warning screen complete with a code and descriptions of an unauthorized alteration. Failure to stop this recording may lead to undesired consequences and compromise psychological well-being, but we continue to push on, unfazed by the warnings. Kinda wish we didn't. With the next section, conditioning, we're subjected to another psychological test, the Stroop test, an actual psychological test dating back to the 30s. This version of said test, however, doesn't actually utilize what the Stroop test does, in a sense. In an actual Stroop test, you're generally given words on a screen, colors, let's say, and the words won't actually be the colors that are listed. For instance, the word yellow may be blue colored, red would be green, and so on. This analyzes the mind in high stress, high anxiety situations. The TF2 tape takes this a bit further, utilizing facial expressions and emotions. Well, that's new. I wonder if Thalison exists in this universe. The faces twist and contort and were met with the final emotion and expression changed as the face on the screen warps into a hideously deformed mockery of what it once was. Another cut, another time period, and this one is in 1992. We're given a glimpse of what appears to be a decently sized house, later confirmed to be the kennel of our good Samaritan, Charlotte. The footage is from a security camera belonging from Evervigil Security. As we view the footage, we see that an unexpected visitor enters the facility, prompting the dogs to start barking. Then, silence. Power goes out. We then cut to the desktop of someone working for Evervigil, Troy Erickson, logging into the computer. He calls the owner, now confirmed to be Charlotte, and the following exchange ensues.
Hello?
Yes, hello, this is Troy with Evervigil Security. Am I speaking with Charlotte Melgren?
Yes. What happened this time?
Miss Melgren, we've detected some unusual activity at Forever Friends Kennels. Our system alerted us that kennel door 1 was open and then closed unexpectedly, followed by a power outage. Is it correct that your primary residence is the first unit at Forever Friends?
Yeah, but okay, so I'm not the one who got the security system. It was my dad. So I don't know if there's some way to fix this or whatever, but you guys have called me in the middle of the night like 5 times in the past couple of weeks, and it's all turned out to be false alarms. Every time.
I'm so sorry about that, ma'am. I can take a look into why that might be happening if you'd like, but first I need to be sure that you're in a safe situation.
So it's unnervingly clear that whatever this thing is has been stalking Charlotte for some time now. And I am also willing to bet that Jim, who had the security system installed, had known something was up. While you could argue that it was a preemptive measure to protect his daughter, I believe that it was a combination of two things. One, he was trying to protect his daughter as any normal dad would do, and two, keep in mind this footage is from 1992, 5 years after the Berkshire County incident. He was already heavily invested in this phenomenon. Charlotte reassures Troy, our security employee, that everything seems normal and she plans to reset the breaker. He tells her to avoid going outside as it's clearly not an ideal place to be right now. They compromise, with Charlotte staying on the phone line as she goes out to reset the breaker. As this happens, Troy begins reviewing the footage from prior nights, receiving numerous playback error messages. It isn't until he gets the footage from the 16th that we finally get a glimpse of something climbing over the roof, the same being that had just broken into the kennel along with the footage of it outside the door. And when Charlotte checks on the dogs, she notices something incredibly off with them, almost as if they're in a trance-like state. What happens next is probably one of the best and most horrifying sequences in an analog horror series I've ever seen. I know I've been saying that a lot throughout this series, but it's just so goddamn perfect. I'm not going to show all of it, but to summarize, the thing broke into the kennels, attacked Charlotte, and while Troy had dispatched police to get her, was utterly powerless to do anything. The combination of voice acting, effects, all of it makes it a truly horrifying sequence in this already fear-heavy series. But the part that gets me the most is when she mentions that she feels as if her skin is moving. Really important to notice too that at some point the kennel door seems to just vanish, leaving just a blank wall with a doormat in front of it, and then suddenly reappears again. We're getting closer to the theories, but I just want to get this out right now. I really believe that this thing is likely the same imaginary friend in Trojan technology, and it had its sights set on Charlotte as its next victim. I might have an idea why Charlotte was targeted. The tape itself, the TF2 tape, resumes again, coming back with the same AI voice, instructing us that a very important test awaits us. The shadowy figure that has been stalking us through the tape is now just about as close as it could be, and I'm not going to lie to you, while I was watching this, I was distracted with the anticipation that something was going to happen with it or not. I'm both disappointed and glad, I guess in a weird way, that nothing came of that. The first of our true-false statements is, if this video is physically changing your brain, it's labeled as true. Psychologically, yeah, but physically? Huh. Statement 2 states that only a very small percentage of people will never betray their moral values, no matter the situation. False. Yeah, as a misanthrope myself, I had a feeling the answer would be that. The reasoning behind it is also pretty valid, and the tape's explanation clearly states that anyone will betray their moral values under the right circumstances. Through your conscious mind, you make your own decisions. Should be true, but it's not, so the tape says. Most decision-making happens at the unconscious level, with the conscious mind rationalizing the decision after the fact. I'm assuming this has to do with people rationalizing their decisions afterwards, approaching an almost utilitarian sort of mindset, or as most of you know, the greater good. Assumptions kill though. Even says, choice is merely an illusion. Statement 4 states that we all have immoral thoughts and desires, but it's critical to focus our energy on the positive aspects of ourselves so that we can be better. Again, false. Its explanation is rather interesting though and unsettling, telling us that repressing this shadow entity within us only feeds it and steals its resolve. You can't reason with it, lock it away, nothing. I also found it interesting that this is where the presence, the shadow entity, is talked about as if it is its own living, separate being, not a part of us that lies deep beneath the surface of our subconscious. Opening the door to your shadow entity is the only way to living a fulfilling life. We're told this is true. The reasoning?
Open the black door.
With that, the testing is completed and activation occurs to begin our awakening sequence. We're subjected to what I can only describe as a bad acid trip with several indecipherable scenes. The only two that I can catch any relevance to the story are the sequence in space, which has clearly been an overlying theme in the series, and the scene that depicts a door opening up, clearly from the perspective of someone trying to hide. I think the cosmic scene with the mountain at the end only reinforces my personal theory, but we're almost there, so hang tight. As we zoom through a tunnel, railroad type sequence thing a couple times, we officially have completed the activation sequence. But this tape is far from over. We cut back to police footage from an officer sent to check on Charlotte, and what follows is hands down my favorite part in this entire series. It's also incredibly disturbing and horrifying. You've been warned. Whatever happened to Charlotte isn't explained fully, but she has now become fused with her dogs in the most horrifying way possible. In a panic, which any sane human being would, the officer flees the site. While not a main theory of mine, it was clearly hinted at throughout the tape, the fate that was set upon Charlotte. It stated early on that thought forms are manifestations of will, emotion, and the like. Everything from love contorts her flesh to the Stroop test, all of it was just a drawn-out explanation of what would eventually take hold of her, and I'll explain this like so. Charlotte wasn't even worried about her own well-being during the entire event between her and Evervigil security. She was more concerned about the animals under her care. She went back to go check on them, and at the same time, the being from Trojan Technologies, this is, I'm assuming, by the way, broke into the kennel. She was not only worried about them, she refused to leave their side. To me, her thought process seemed like being near them offered some kind of protection and comfort. The two major thought forms we've seen so far are the cracked mask and this thing, so I'm also venturing a guess into the possibility that these are incredibly powerful thought forms, going so far as to being able to warp reality itself and potentially create their own thought forms. This is where this theory gets interesting. In her last moments, all Charlotte could think about is the safety of her dogs and, obviously to a large degree, herself. Her unconscious mind, coupled with being in the mere presence of this thought form, gave in to her deepest thoughts and desires. She would never have to worry about her dogs again. They would be together forever. After this nightmarish sequence, the tape concludes, prompting the viewer to give themselves enough time to rest before continuing on to the next tape, TF3, The Shadow, Communion, and Assimilation. And just like that, we've reached the end of the story so far in GREYLOCK. With all that information in mind, we can finally piece together a timeline, and most importantly, some answers that I might be able to piece together on what has happened so far. So let's get started, because there's really a lot to unpack in this. This was by far one of the most dense stories I've covered, and it would be impossible to accurately tie every single fragment of information down. I know some of you may not be happy or may not agree with the outcome, but just bear with me and have an open mind to this. Luckily for us, almost every entry has a date on it somewhere, so while still vast in nature, it's smoother to piece this together with a timeline. The story takes place before the first human walked the Earth. In the GBS broadcast, we're shown a rogue planet colliding with the Earth, not only creating the moon, but leaving behind fragments on both Earth and the moon. I also believe that this impact point itself is right where Mount GREYLOCK resides, marking it the first of many events in this series. The moon itself also has ties to Jungian psychology, which will be really important to remember in a second. Ages pass, and it seems that every single living civilization makes a pilgrimage to GREYLOCK, like moths to a flame, to worship some unnamed presence, perhaps maybe even the shards of the planet itself. In the early beginnings of the United States, Semiodyne was created, a tech powerhouse with deep pockets rooted in the United States government, more specifically the United States Army. Percival stated that he had a great-great-grandfather, which puts these origins most likely somewhere during the late 1800s. This could also explain the pictures we see in that entry, as Semiodyne is most likely just a front for some type of cult, perhaps obsessed with whatever lies beneath the mountain. 1963 gives us our earliest known date, with the post-assassination of Kennedy and the beginnings of the NAI, a program set to put critical technology into every American's home, with one tiny exception. They're outfitted with surveillance cameras. In 1965, we're given the audio tape regarding Tiffany Crisaldi and her doctor, who I still believe is Dr. Hayes, working hand-in-hand with Semiodyne. Tiffany is shown to have a unique set of attributes. Not only can she see the black door, a threshold leading to our shadow entity, but she can also see the tall man, the cracked face we've become accustomed to seeing throughout the series. We take a massive leap to 1981 following Dr. Hayes' symposium, where he talks more about Jungian psychology and staring into the eyes of gods as equals. Jungian psychology, specifically the shadow, is another overarching theme in GREYLOCK. However, we're gonna stop for a second to dive a little deeper into this and include another persona from Jung, the self. In the simplest terms, think of yourself as an iceberg. The self, your outer persona, is the surface, what everyone sees on a daily basis. The shadow, however, is everything lying deep beneath the abyss of the unconscious. In the series of GREYLOCK, the self is the mask, and the darkest reaches are what lies behind the mask, and whatever is under that godforsaken mountain seeks to invert the two. In 1987, the Moretti Construction Group is contracted out by Semiodyne to both build Unit 13 and play an unwilling and unknown part in their testing. I think that in doing this, they were also given the means to release the cracked mask being, who we'll get to shortly. I think the Morelli crew was offered up as a sacrifice, but something unexpected happened. They came back, twisted and altered in ways that would make a malevolent god weep. Almost immediately following this, the Berkshire County incident happens, and whether this was in fact Moretti's crew responsible for the break-ins or other thought forms that had escaped remains hard to determine. While it's possible that it could have been Moretti and his men, as they were later apprehended and in turn to be studied, there was an astonishing number of break-ins reported that night, and we don't know the true number of his construction team. Also, there are quite a few inconsistencies with the time, as both the Max Headroom episode and Arnold's recounting of the break-ins confirm this. As for the thought form theory, the TF1 tape wasn't released until 1993, which means that either the tape was made before the tape were shown, or perhaps something else entirely. My belief, as I had stated in the analysis of tape 12, is that we're dealing with, so far, two incredibly dangerous and powerful entities. So it's not out of the question that merely releasing it spread its influence like fallout from an atomic bomb. It could have been the culprit as well, and upon its release had just merely demonstrated its power. I also have a theory that this is where both tape 1 and tape 2 happen, as I think that while the person we see in the videos are in fact Jim, including the gloved hand we see in Unexpected Visitors, that he was already onto whatever Semiodyne was trying to do under the mountain. I'll explain like this. Jim, hot on the case, is looking for leads, and stumbles across something he wants the most: access to the Semiodyne archives. While it doesn't necessarily line up with the erratic behavior we see towards the end of tape 2, it does explain why he might have been the one in the car hightailing it out of there. Either a thought form tried to get into his car, or a body had hit his car. This would explain the bodies falling from the sky. Connecting the dots, he speeds up the mountain to gain access to the facility in tape 1, and I'm also wondering if this was why he was trying to gain access to the morgue, to make sure there weren't any more surprises waiting for him in there, such as other thought forms thought to be dead. Then there's also Tiffany's tape, the pregnancy tape, occurring around the same time, as Arnold also mentions this event, calling it the pregnancy phenomenon, meaning Tiffany wasn't the only one affected at the time. Some time passes and we get back to normal and old odd ends, where we can tell that GBS is being fed misinformation to keep the public from panicking, only to have the broadcast interrupted by some unknown faction. Arnold, at this time, is also killed by the entity, but not before giving us the backstory behind the mountain and plans to give Jim the information. The next series of events detail Tiffany's autopsy and that she may still be alive, though it's not in the true sense, and in my honest opinion, she might even be a thought form herself. It's her, but it's a manifestation of all her grief, anger, and pain personified. We learn about the symbol on Tiffany's corpse, which also appears in the tape that Jim receives. I'm willing to bet that this is actually Semiodyne still, or more specifically, the cult that hides behind the veil that is Semiodyne. The mask, if you will. We finally reach the most current events in the form of tape 3, tape 11, and 12, as well as the message and footage on tape 9. We learn about the TF tapes, a series of instructional pieces created by Unit 13 and Semiodyne detailing the background and process of thought forms and their creation. TF1 is addressed to Alex, Tiffany's fiancé, and TF2 to Charlotte, but I still believe the person watching this is all Jim. Alex's involvement in Unit 13 seems interesting, and I think it was due to having a chance to bring Tiffany back. Unbeknownst to him at the time, she was back already in a way. What's slightly confusing, or distressing, depending on how you think about it, was that the tape addressed to Charlotte wasn't dated until 1993, with Charlotte's incident happening in 1992. This also leads me to believe that these tapes aren't necessarily meant for the person themselves addressed in the tape, but instead one person and one person only, Jim. So to me, that leaves one thing and one thing only. What the hell is inside Mount GREYLOCK? Well, here it is. My theories surrounding the GREYLOCK tapes. Bear in mind, these are just my conclusions and theories that I myself have come to. They may be right or wrong, but I ask that you take it as it is. Yes, it's cosmic horror, but not in the way we're so accustomed to. Whatever was left behind from that celestial body is in fact lying underneath Mount GREYLOCK. But what if it wasn't a planet? What if it was something else entirely, coursing through the vast cosmos, sleeping until the moment it was awakened from a slumber that remembers nothing but darkness and cold? It was the very essence of the shadow itself. From this impact, this awakening, ancient civilizations came to pray and make offerings to a being that at the time could not be understood, but held a power so infinite and omnipotent that to even the most advanced ancient civilizations, this would be considered godlike. This being took physical form and became none other than the cracked pallid mask. This thing isn't just a thought form. It's the embodiment of humanity's own shadow. Now, call it Satan, the devil, whatever you'd like, but like I said earlier on, the devil does take many forms. To us, in a more broad sense, the devil represents all that is evil. Wrong. It doesn't have to have religious context, though to some this may help give precedent to its existence. Whatever it is, this thing has been here since the dawn of life, has lived since before the sun was young, and now has escaped back into our world. You see, the cracked pallid mask isn't a representation of mankind's shadow entity. The cracked pallid mask is mankind's shadow entity, the shadow of all humanity. Every single repressed, horrible, evil, malicious thought and emotion manifested in physical form. The very mask it wears represents the face we all wear that hides our true intentions, but it's worn and beaten, soon to be giving way to the vast darkness that hides underneath. With all that in mind, Semiodyne and the cult, which I think are one and the same, believed that offering sacrifice was a way to make it stronger and, to some degree, willing to let them control it for their own purposes. By utilizing technology, they gave it the National Access Initiative, which in turn funneled every dark, repressed thought from those surveillance cameras directly to it, allowing it to fester and grow stronger. I also think that Semiodyne was incredibly naive and arrogant in this action. What if those ancient sacrifices from those long-forgotten civilizations weren't offerings, but a means to complete a ritual to keep it from leaving? This would explain why Moretti and his crew didn't die and instead had been altered due to the Shadow's profane power. They were meant to be sacrifices in Semiodyne's eyes, but instead became much, much more than that. As time progressed, they had learned more about the science of thought forms and, as I am inclined to believe, decided that if they couldn't control it, they could just create artificial thought forms, perhaps to rival or maybe even end it. Once again, they were woefully mistaken, and this led to even more calamity. Now, in regards to Tiffany and perhaps even Charlotte, Semiodyne was looking for special persons who could perhaps see or interact with the cracked mask, as Tiffany had shown that she had a special connection with it. Perhaps Tiffany was the key to unlocking a means to act as an emissary for the cracked mask. Tiffany's end is well documented, but Charlotte doesn't really have any leads, but I'll give my 2 cents on it. Charlotte, and most likely Jim, were approached by Semiodyne to conduct tests for their research. Jim shot them down, and this led to Jim being suspicious of Semiodyne's intentions. He did everything he could to protect her, and now it's too late. The other side to this is that they, Semiodyne and the cult, may be looking into special cases that could manifest a thought form as powerful as the cracked mask and use it for their own means, potentially weaponizing it. Now, the other important being in this series that we've seen more than once is the tall skeletal nightmare that we see later on. If I were to guess, this thing is actually either an escaped thought form from Unit 13, or, bear with me, a thought form created by the shadow itself. It possesses a lot of qualities similar to the cracked mask, but acts different in a sense. It's more malicious, even more animalistic than its counterpart. The two do have some things in common also, such as mimicking sounds, warping reality, and potentially having the sheer power to create their own thought forms. Where the moon comes into play also has some relevance. In Carl Jung's psychology, the moon symbolizes the unconscious, or the realm of the soul and the inner self. It represents the underdeveloped, unrealized, or rejected parts of ourselves and is associated heavily with the shadow. Perhaps there are also fragments of the strange celestial body embedded on the moon as well, further amplifying the shadow presence. Most of these instances we see happen at night, and the only outlier really is the pregnancy phenomenon. There's a specific shot of the moon in Unexpected Visitors, and it's a full moon. Since ancient times, full moons have been associated with odd or insane behavior, including sleepwalking, suicide, illegal activity, and fits of violence. This, coupled with the rogue planet theory, go hand in hand with each other. With all that said, to me, these aren't mutations or strange phenomena in the areas surrounding Mount GREYLOCK. It's evil incarnate, created by the most horrifying monster of all, man. We, through our greed, lust, and violence, help spawn a being unbound by all space and time. Every moment you spent giving birth to a forbidden thought helped foster the beginning of our end. Every ounce of greed, deceit, every single unbridled and esoteric thought and emotion we formulated within the blackest reaches of our minds sparked an infanticide in that cursed area of Massachusetts. The unmatched excess and egos of minds like those associated with Semiodyne, the cult, Dr. Hayes, helped cave in the black door that held something back that was never meant to exist in our world. And now, we are subjected to this transformation, peeling back the mask of what hides our true selves: monsters. While the shadow may have came from the vast, incomprehensible void of the cosmos, it was man that created the monster. And no matter what Jim or anyone else can do, it is by what our own minds created that we too shall fall. This easily is one of the best series I have ever had the privilege of watching. The story, although very obscure at times, is a very, very unique take on the genre, one that actually kept me unnerved throughout the entire time I was watching. The concept is brilliant, the execution is absolutely amazing, and I really hope that this isn't the last of GREYLOCK. I think its creators did an amazing job, and they have something incredibly special here. I really hope you guys stuck with me till the end. I know this was a lot longer than any video I've ever done, but I feel like I've done everything to make it worth your time. I hope I have. Just remember to like, subscribe, and comment what you think on this video and what your theories are, because I'd really like to know what everybody else thinks. Also, let me know what you think in general and stay with us to see where the road goes ahead. I guess see you guys next time. Love y'all. Stay weird.